In the lifespan of every civilization, there comes a time when they obtain the ability to destroy themselves. This becomes a test with dire consequences, a test that we face every day, and a test that some, like the builders of Iocath, fail in catastrophic fashion. In eons past, an advanced civilization reigned in the unknown regions. They existed far outside the reach of the Republic and the Hutts, and they quite enjoyed their privacy. So they found a star in the middle of nowhere and constructed an enormous shell around it, encompassing the ball of gas and effectively disappearing off the face of the galaxy. Although they existed thousands of years ago, their technology dwarfed our own modern standards, and they did not allow their isolation to halt their progress. They programmed droids to serve their every need, while they focused on improving their capabilities for destruction. They built an enormous, synchronized fleet that acted as one devastating fist. They constructed cannons that would annihilate an entire fleet with a single arcing blast. They built enormous titans of war designed to purge planets of all life. They tested these weapons on their unsuspecting neighbors, obliterating native populations to study the power of their creations. But then they failed the test. A civil war broke out on their artificial planet, and the machines of war they built lived up to their expectations. With their planet's population rapidly dwindling, they thought that maybe they could banish their superweapons unguided into the greater galaxy, never to return, and maybe then they could weather the storm they had made. But although they rid themselves of their eternal fleet and their omni-cannons, it was far too late to stop the titans they had built, who annihilated what remained of their creators, leaving only an empty shell orbiting a forgotten star, occupied by sentient, ever-weaponizing droids. But the legacy of these forgotten builders would live on when their exiled superweapons began to fulfill their purpose, the complete destruction of all life they encountered. The Eternal Fleet wandered aimlessly through space, glassing any planet unfortunate enough to be caught in its path. Now, not much is known about the civilizations they encountered in wild space. The region does live up to its name, but it's safe to assume that they didn't really appreciate having their forces obliterated from orbit by emotionless superfleets. But fortunately for them, they discovered another wandering Iocathian superweapon, the Gravestone, which happened to have one of Iocath's fleet-destroying cannons in its armaments. When the Eternal Fleet arrived at a backwater planet called Zakul, a few brave men and women used the Gravestone to ambush the hive mind, wreaking havoc with its omni-cannon and eventually destroying the fleet. Not trusting such a dangerous vessel in the hands of any government, the crew of the Gravestone sailed deep into one of Zakul's many swamps and scuttled the ship, praying her terrible power would never again see the light of day. Unfortunately, this level of carnage would not go unnoticed by the greater galaxy. Emperor Vitiate heard the rumors of a fleet that could block out the stars and went to investigate. There he found the planet of Zakul, whose people whispered of the fleet he coveted and worshipped gods of death. Vitiate knew that if he wanted to discover the source of this fleet and keep the power to himself instead of sharing it with his Sith Empire, he would need to build a new power base here in wild space. So he possessed a Zakulian warrior by the name of Valkorion and promised to free Zakul from the oppression of their nihilistic gods. Using his near-limitless power, he crushed any Zakulian who resisted the coup of the existing government and established his own rule over the planet. Then he set about turning this backwater into his own personal empire. He transformed the Force-sensitive of the planets into knights that were personally loyal to him, and sought out the most powerful Force-sensitives to see into the future, naming them his Scions. He commanded his subjects to construct towering spire cities that stretched kilometers into the sky, laying the foundations for his pet project. When he deemed them ready, Vitiate used the Scions to locate the now dormant Eternal Fleet, cast adrift in a cold, dark, and unremarkable section of space. And with the Armada rediscovered, he spent a generation constructing a throne that he could use to command such a fleet. Once the preparations were ready, he began limit testing his new toy. Once more, the Eternal Fleet roamed wild space, blockading planets with ease and glassing anyone who was foolish enough to put up a fight. This conquest off the edge of the map proved to be extremely profitable for Zakul, whose population became little more than lethargic hedonists. As long as they didn't question where all the blood-soaked credits were coming from, they could live a life of luxury for free under Vitiate's reign. But Vitiate, like all Sith, was not satisfied with his little empire on the edge of space. He wanted to use the Eternal Fleet to conquer the galaxy, but, as always, he was patient. He did not simply smash his new empire into the galaxy as a wrecking ball and attempt to fight all his enemies at once. Instead, he unleashed the Sith Empire on the Republic and had the two sides tear each other to shreds in a war that we've been fighting for the past 50 years. When all the major players in the galaxy had thrown everything in the kitchen sink at each other and were scattered and dispersed across 1,000 battlefields, Vitiate made his move and unleashed his army of superweapons on an unsuspecting and ill-prepared galaxy. That's a story for another time. For now, stay safe out there. Signing off.